So I have up here Calendargate 1.0. This caused a lot of controversy, a lot about this time last year. So let's recap. All right, about a year ago, we were first introduced to the conservative beer company Ultra Light, who ventured into making their first demonic calendar, and leading the charge in calling them out was none other than Bryson Gray. And I believe he rightly identified this calendar as being demonic because it is. Now, some of you who might not be Christian might be thinking, this is not that big of a deal. They all seem pretty, fine, in comparison to worldly standards. But there's a reason that I think this calendar is particularly nefarious, and it's not just like like a illustrated calendar or something like that. Although I'm not endorsing it. This is a brand that exclusively markets itself as conservative. They claim to have conservative values, and I don't particularly see anything conservative about featuring scantily clad women in calendars to sell beer to dads. I don't think that's conservative. Seem very conservative to me. But yet that's what they tried to do. So I do believe that when Bryson Gray called the calendar demonic, he was 100% correct. And his response ultimately led to this huge conversation about modesty and what it actually means to be conservative. And this persisted for weeks. All right. This went on for weeks, this conversation. And you had some people like myself who recognize the calendar as a whole as immodest. Now, there were definitely some photos, though there was this one in particular featuring the redheaded libertarian, which was not nearly as bad as the rest of the calendar. She's pretty well dressed. But her participating in the calendar as a whole, I would say was probably problematic. It probably contributed to um, men looking at other women un unfaithfully. And she's posing with the cross in this calendar that is marketed again to dads. This isn't like a libertarian calendar. They market themselves as a conservative beer company, and they are using these suggestive photos to sell their beer to dads, which, by the way, are also husbands. I made that point when this controversy first erupted. So you had Josie, and Bryson Gray kind of going at it. I mean, they they went to war, and it was like a mask off moment for me with Josie because I previously had liked her, and I thought she was being kind of petty. So yeah, I just was not with it anymore. But anyway, so you had one faction, the right side, our side, uh, rightly identifying that this calendar was demonic, and then you had some others defending the calendar and accusing conservatives of being prude and being Puritans, and saying, "Oh, what's the big deal? They're just in, they're, these women aren't, immodestly dressed, and they'd be using, the redheaded libertarian and some of the other, there's a couple other where they're pretty well dressed, but ignoring the whole rest of the calendar, So I'll bring that image back up, just so that we can look at it once more. So, we had Riley Gaines here in a bikini, Sarah Gonzalez, Dana Loesch, fine. This seems a little inappropriate. Ashley St. Clair looking suggestive, also again in a bathtub looking suggestive. This chick, in a bikini, looking suggestive. So yeah, just not a good look. Not a good look at all. Especially for conservative movement. So I just think big fail there, big miss. And so needless to say, I fell into the camp that, found this calendar to be inappropriate. So, well, let's flash forward. Let's flash forward to yesterday, and now we have a new calendar brought to us by the same man, the same degenerate man that brought us the first calendar. His name is Seth Weathers, and this is a little thread that he threw together to promote his new calendar. So he said, "Well, uh, you've all been waiting for what you have all been waiting for 12 months of conservative dads, MAGA babes from our 2025 calendar." And this is a thread. I'm not going to show you guys the thread because I just think it's inappropriate. And I'm just flat out going to show it. If you want to see it, you can go look at his thread. Even this photo that he was using to kind of lead it, like, her side breast is showing in the photo. And I actually think that this is his wife, which is kind of more disgusting to like you're using your wife to sell sexually suggestive photos of other women to dads and husbands. That's disgusting. um so I think yeah, that's a crazy way and a crazy scheme to sell his crappy beer, but that's what he chose to do. He chose to use his his platform and I guess his wealth or whatever whatever he has to market this calendar to men and husbands, and call it conservative. No. Just because just because we slap the label conservative on something doesn't actually make it conservative, you know? We have whole factions of people that call themselves conservatives, like, we have, conservative gays. That doesn't make any sense. But by very definition of being like a homosexual, you're not conservative, you know? Uh, Being scantily clad, that's not conservative, all right? If you want to be a libertarian, again, be a libertarian. That's fine. They're down with that. Identify as that, but stop calling yourself a conservative. Conservatives are supposed to conserve tradition, all right? And part of the traditional values of this country is modesty. And if we're not conserving modesty, then what the hell are we doing? Really, seriously, what are we doing? So, yeah. So I shouldn't have to spell out that, using scantily clad women to sell beer isn't conservative, you know? And honestly, do we have absolutely no modesty standards for conservative women? Can we at the very least agree that posting photos in bikinis to sell beer to dads, husbands is not okay? Can we at least agree there? Can we agree on that? But unfortunately, we can't because we can't have any conversation around modesty without being met with rage and ad hominem attacks. It's silly. We're grown-ups. We can have these grown-up conversations about modesty, and I'd like to have one, and that's what I intend to do. So we can at least establish from my perspective, the right perspective, that these calendars are not modest, and I think most people agree with me. So we're going to look through some of the comments that he was receiving on this thread because I do think they're open. So again, this is the bottom of the thread. You'd have to scroll through all degenerate photos to arrive here. But Abby Livy says, "I can't even complain this year. This product is just too pathetic." Christopher, the Christ bearer, says, "This is demonic." Chris is right. It is demonic. Morgan Ariel says, "Great. Another whole calendar that nobody asked for." Appalachian Chestnut writes, "The images in the calendar are pretty tame, and Yankees have never understood why Southern culture has always allowed women to dress immodestly because it's hot down here. However, the problem is featuring married women and marketing this to married men specifically. Gross." So this is one of those things where it's like, I get hot too. I live down south. I'm not going to dress that way. I'm just not going to dress that way. Yeah, it gets hot. Deal with it. You don't have to you don't have to walk around in bikinis every time it gets hot. Yeah, we have one person agreeing with Seth. I love these calendars. It's so old school and classic. Yeah, because that's exactly something liberals would make. Yeah. So I guess they're more classical liberal than conservative. I think that would make sense for them. Philip Anderson wrote, "You do realize that half of right wing Twitter is going to attack you." And then he says, "So you're saying 50% is with me? I'll take it." That I did. I was reluctant to comment on this because of that exact reason. Because I know by commenting on it, you're bringing attention to it. But I'd rather bring him the negative, because as what Tiss says, this is degeneracy, and y'all should stop. He's right. It is. It is degeneracy. This is wildly inappropriate for conservatives uh, to be using as a marketing strategy. If part of your marketing strategy is, you find yourself asking, how can I use scantily clad women to sell my product? Maybe you're not conservative, or maybe you're not as conservative as you'd like to think, because there has to be some sort of standard of modesty. Look, I'm not, contrary to what they'll say, I'm not advocating for women to be in burqas. I think there's a fine line between bikini and burqa, and I think we can find it. I think we can meet in the middle somewhere and find something that works, that's modest, that's not a bikini and not a burqa. Is that too much to ask for? Are there no articles of clothing out there that conservative women can wear that are modest? Is it impossible in our modern culture to dress modestly? Is it? I don't think so. All right. So now that we established that the calendar is very clearly immodest, let's talk about something that I think is a little less clear. And it's this photo that I saw recently that I just wanted to share with you. All right. Now, when I first saw this photo, I thought, and I'm not lying, and I don't have porn brain, I'm just on Twitter, so you see a lot of crazy stuff. And when I first saw this photo, and I don't mean this as an insult to these women, but this is legitimately what I thought. I thought this photo was to promote OnlyFans or some sort of sex podcast. That's what I thought when I saw this photo. So imagine my surprise when I came to discover that this is actually to promote a tour these two women are doing for their podcast called Girls Gone Bible. Now, if that title sounds kind of familiar, you're probably old enough to remember ads for certain adult entertainment videos called Girls Gone Wild. Now, actually, I just want to go real quick to their webpage because I do think it's important to show this so that you understand what I'm talking about. So, boom. So, yeah. So they even use the same logo and font for for their content, and I think that's kind of wild. So I get that it's a play on words, but is it really wise to draw your viewers to make a connection with prominent smut videos every time they see the name of your podcast? Is that wise? I don't I don't think so. Yeah, call me crazy. I don't think it's wise. I don't. Anyway, I had ended up posing a question where I asked people whether or not they thought that this was modest. And most people actually agreed with me. I was surprised. I was actually surprised because I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting people to get really mad. Um, but that was not the case. So shout out to, my followers on Twitter for being sane and rational. I appreciate you. I really do. You still have some standards, but there were a few that were on the fence, and I was actually able to persuade some. Now, some of you may see this photo and think to yourself, shoulders? Really? You're getting upset about shoulders? Come on. Come on. What come on, bro. What's wrong with you? Uh no, it's not just shoulders, okay? I think that this girl on the right is fine. I don't she's she's okay. It's the one on the left that I actually take more issue with. So, she is the one on the left subtly exposes her cleavage, and worse, you can't tell if this woman is in a dress or lingerie. I, I can't tell from this picture. That's why my first thought was that it was an OnlyFans podcast or a sex podcast because I couldn't tell. Um, but if I showed you this picture, and I do mean this as no disrespect to them because I don't really know that much about them. I just know that they host this podcast. I know that they're very popular. But if I were to show you just this photo alone, do you think anybody would draw the conclusion that they are promoting a tour they're going on to talk about Jesus Christ and the Bible? Do, 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 do you think anybody would draw that conclusion just by looking at that photo? I don't think so. I don't think people would draw that conclusion that is a Christian podcast Bible tour photo. No. Now, this isn't an indictment on the actual women. I'm sure they're lovely ladies. And I don't watch them, so I couldn't really tell you anything about them other than what I've seen I've seen like a couple clips from them in this photo. But I don't think that photo screams Christian values. I think they could have left less to the imagination and showed a little less skin, to promote their Christian podcast tour. If this weren't a Christian podcast tour, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't care. I would treat them just like every other worldly woman. I wouldn't pay them no mind. There's tons of women that are doing this. Barstool Sports has tons of women that are promoting degenerate podcasts. You have Call Her Daddy. I'm surprised they aren't guest hosts on that show. But this would have, for the world, this is just the world being the world. But these women don't claim to be of the world. They claim to be of Christ, and they are insanely popular and are proclaiming the name of Jesus. And they are so popular, by the way, that they were just invited to pray with the President of the United States or for the President of the United States. So we'll pull this clip up real quick. Full disclosure, I have not listened to this prayer, but we'll listen to it together.
God, we thank you. We thank you that your will always prevails. Thank you, God, that it's your will. Your kingdom come, Lord. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, in America as it is in heaven, in the life of President Donald Trump as it is in heaven.
And we just want to take a moment and honor President Donald Trump.
Some people were mad about that prayer. I actually don't think it was that bad. But regardless, anyway, so it could tell you the level of influence they have. They're here speaking at praying for Trump at this rally or event. And yeah, so these aren't nobodies, all right? These people have a lot of influence. and they are ranked number one for religion and spirituality on podcasts like Spotify. They also have a social media following with a, a s- you know it's not small, it's not little. So on Instagram they have over 300,000 followers last I checked, and YouTube they have more than 650,000 subscribers, so more than half a million subscribers. So these women again have reach, but this commentary that I'm having is not solely about these women in particular. I think these ladies bring to light a clear misunderstanding of what it means to be modest. If the women of God don't look discernibly different than the women of the world, then what is it that truly sets us apart? What is it? What does it mean to be modest if our form of modesty doesn't look any different from the women of the world? What does it mean to be modest? What does it mean to clothe ourselves in righteousness when we're drawing all the attention to ourselves and leaving things to the imagination? What does it say to the world when supposedly Christian conservative women are posing for calendars to sell sex to dads and husbands? What does that say? No. We need to raise a standard. We need to have a conversation, a serious conversation about being modest. Now, I'm not saying the Girls Gone Bible thing is the most immodest thing in the world, but you know, does this photo draw glory to God, or are they drawing glory to themselves? Judge for yourself. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So feel free to comment and let me know.